Joining me now is former FBI Director James Comey. Mr. Comey, we want to bring you into this and your experience. Your new book is Saving Justice, Truth, Transparency, and Trust. And we're hoping that we can have a longer interview, maybe on the other side of the mayor's briefing. But it is startling to hear that there are so many people on this watch list in one place, and there wasn't enough security to contain them. I'm going to interrupt myself. Jim Comey, stand by. The mayor is briefing right now.
Provide an update on preparations for the 59th presidential inauguration, which by now everyone knows has an unprecedented level of preparation and execution. I am joined by members of my administration as well as our federal partners. Let me start by introducing Matt Miller, who is the special agent in charge of the Washington Field Office of the United States Secret Service. The United States Secret Service is, of course, the lead agency for national special security events, including the 59th inauguration. Mary Ann Tierney, who's the regional administrator for the Federal Emergency Management Agency. We'll hear from Ms. Tierney, but she will have to depart following her remarks. Jeff Reinbold, Superintendent of the National Mall and Memorial Parks for the National Park Service. Stephen Booker, who is the Acting Assistant Chief for the United States Park Police. Paul Wiedefeld, who is the General Manager and CEO for the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, or Metro. Ronald Pavlik, the Chief of the Metro Transit Police. Also, Chief Conti of the Metropolitan Police Department, or DC Police. Kevin Donahue, who is the City Administrator for the District of Columbia, as well as Chief Donnelly, who is the Chief of the DC Fire and Emergency Medical Service. We may be also joined by representatives of the DC National Guard, who we have invited to join us as well. Let me start with a brief situational update, and we will then hear from our guest. I want to reiterate my request to Americans to enjoy this 59th inauguration of the President of the United States and the Vice President of the United States from home. Enjoy it virtually on January 20th. Our tradition, in fact, our constitutional mandate that the transition of power occurs by noon on January the 20th will happen right here in the District of Columbia. And we want everybody to enjoy it and enjoy it right in their own states, in their own living rooms, and with their own families. We know that this is the right request for our public safety and our public health. The National Park Service is, of course, the steward of our nation's parks, including parks right here in Washington, D.C. And while the situation continues to change each day, we do know that as of this morning, various road closures are in effect, and garages in the district have been restricted as well. If you've tried to drive around the city, you already know this. There is a recent posting of streets that have been impacted by these closures. And here is the most recent list of road closures released this morning by the National Park Service in cooperation with the United States Secret Service. We continue to ask anyone who doesn't absolutely need to be out and about or in those restricted areas to avoid them. Earlier this week, Metro announced service adjustments that went into effect today and will be in place through Thursday, January 21st. And that includes 13 Metro stations and detouring 26 Metro bus routes. You can learn more about those adjustments at WMATA.gov wmata.com. Additionally, streetcar service in the district is suspended, and you can continue to find updates on that at inauguration.dc.gov. We also know that residents are eager to do what they can do to keep our city safe, and we certainly appreciate it. So we want you to be vigilant, look around yourselves when you're out and about, and if you see something, absolutely say something. And you may report anything that you think is out of the norm by calling 911. You may report suspicious activity at 727-9099. You can go to MPD's iWatchDC.org website or text tips to 50411. We are also recommending that businesses download, print, and display these signs. And these signs let anyone know that firearms are not welcome on the premises. We want businesses who encounter anyone with a weapon to call 911 and try not to confront that person or persons themselves. These signs can be downloaded at inauguration.dc.gov. Later today, HSEMA, that's DC's Homeland Security Agency, and MPD will host a community call to discuss the district's planning. Residents and stakeholders can join that call today at 4:30 p.m. by dialing 844-881-1314. The conversation will also be broadcast live on Channel 16, as well as all DC government platforms. If you haven't already done so, sign up to receive specific alerts by registering. You can register and text INAUG 2021 to 888-777. And finally, all of this information can be located in one place at inauguration.dc.gov. Once again, we will hear from our partners who have been engaged in this planning and are responsible for various aspects of execution. First and foremost, Matt Miller is the special agent in charge of the Washington Field Office for the United States Secret Service. Mr. Miller. Agent Miller, I should say.
Mr. Miller works.
Before the agent takes the podium there, I want to say that they obviously know that they have bit off more than they can chew in regards towards performing the safety and the well-being of the people that's going to be at the actual inauguration. Because of it, they're asking the public to pay very, very close attention. That if the public sees something that is unusual, odd, different, or dangerous, do not confront them people, but contact the numbers that she just read over the phone. That way, you can possibly help to eliminate a tragedy that could be facing the whole world in this inauguration. To me, that just doesn't endure upon to the actual inauguration, but that should be that way with any common citizen under the Good Samaritan law, that we are supposed to contact law enforcement, regardless whether it be a child or brutality or violence that's brewing. We are supposed to contact law enforcement to let them know what is occurring. That's exactly what David and I done out here for a consistency of 3 years during the time that we was constantly calling the sheriff, the Weakley County Sheriff's Department, and could not get no decent response from the Weakley County courts, the judicial system, after hiring attorneys, and still could not get a good leg up on what was going on out here. This is failure of dereliction of duty coming from various judges, beginning with Tommy Moore and Mike Pence, Tommy Thomas, prosecutors, Mike Wilson, the ones that did not pay attention towards what was going on out here. And for some reason, we was treated in a biased behavior to the point that they really could care less about our well-being. Now, there's no doubt that I have been, I'm going to use the word lied upon, or even bamboozled to the degree that certain high uppity ups that is fixing to speak has tainted my reputation by saying false accusations about me in regards to me possibly being a threat to my own people. These are the people that has the power to ruin an individual's life. And they have done just exactly that. They have ruined my life. They have ruined my life socially, economically, physically, with my family, with my friends, and with my church members. These are the very people who set up the assaults upon to a ministry that never should have touched the Windmill Ministries, going all the way back into 1989, whenever the ministry was first attacked in Madison County, Jackson, Tennessee. So please, let's listen to these words of these people that has failed the safety and the security of the American people again and again and again. And now they have finally awoken and they have finally arisen to the occasion at hand.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mayor Bowser, for inviting me to join you. And on behalf of the men and women of the United States Secret Service, I'm happy to speak about plans for next week's presidential inauguration and answer any questions that may arise at this time. January 20th will be this nation's 59th presidential inauguration. Designated as a National Special Security Event, or NSSE, the Secret Service is again serving as the lead agency with respect to operational planning and security for the event. As most of you are aware, the Department of Homeland Security recently extended the NSSE designation dates for the period covering January 13th to January 21st.
Do you know what he said? He said the leading agency. Whenever I was apprehended in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, it was these people that got online and started typing up all kinds of crazy false accusations about me pertaining to what had occurred in my life in Wheeling, West Virginia, going all the way back to the early 90s. It was these people that put out a dragnet on my life to the point that I couldn't go nowhere, I couldn't breathe, I couldn't go to work nowhere, I couldn't go socially nowhere, to church nowhere, without these people putting out false propaganda and ruining my life. And you might be asking, why are you telling us this now? Well, because it helps to verify what has occurred in the Windmill Ministry's life pertaining to the anointing that God placed upon to an individual in 1980 and 8, whenever Ronald Reagan got a hold of 9 tapes that helped him dissolve the tension and the frequencies that was going on amongst the superpowers at that time towards ending of the Cold War in Russia, of the falling of the Berlin Wall. That's why. This hadn't got nothing to do with me, but what it's got to do with is giving the right glory and honor to the right person, which is God the Father, working through the Son, Jesus Christ, towards my testimony of what occurred. These people have tried to ruin the favor of God. Even the court system in Kentucky is so corrupt that they was going to post some sort of a federal charge on my life simply because I had made reference of wanting to see the death of Satan. Whenever you are tagged this way, when they have got you on this type of a watch list, a no-flight list, a watch list, they can literally make an individual's life, they can literally ruin your life and never really have to touch you because of all the things that they can throw up on the computer about you, to the point that decent people don't want to have nothing to do with you. Legitimate people don't want to have nothing to do with you. And the thing about it is, I have been trying to be legitimate since 1983, whenever an automobile rolled over on top of me less than a mile away here in Weakley County, Tennessee, trying to be legit about my sincerity and about how I felt pertaining to my passion in serving God and serving the Lord Jesus Christ. It is these people that have intertwined, that have come between the constitution of not just a citizen, but the constitution of a ministry, that has intervened towards wanting to kill it or destroy it before it ever got off the ground good. In other words, I was shot out of the saddle before I ever got out of the gate. Why is this? Why have they done this? Why have they violated their own constitution? And even mine. And the ministries. Why have they done this? I'm going to tell you why. Simply because of the works of the devil. The way that their system is set up, it's not set up in a godly form, but it's set up in an evil form. And this evil is what has brought us where we was versus where we are now, being $28 trillion in debt and all these problems at bay. Now, one may be wondering, what's motivating all these people towards wanting to be disruptive during this election? Is it simply because they feel like that the election has been stolen? Part of it. But the other part is that people are tired of being picked on. They're tired of being taken advantage of. And they're tired of watching our government fail in safety proceedings towards taking care of we the people. So let's listen to what this guy's got to say in regards to the event that's coming up this next week in bringing in the 46th president of the United States, which is Joe Biden and Miss Harrison.
In response to the events of January 6th, when an election protest turned into a violent, deadly, and unlawful assault on the United States Capitol. For well over a year, we have been working with our federal, state, and municipal partners to develop and implement a comprehensive operational security plan to ensure the safety of everyone participating in the event, as well as those who may try to come to D.C. to watch the inauguration or spend time in the nation's capital. Anyone who's seen any of the mayor's recent press conferences or listened to her earlier statements will realize we're discouraging this in lieu of virtual participation, but we are prepared. We cannot allow a recurrence of the chaos and illegal activity that the United States and the world witnessed last week. Our democracy is built on the rule of law, and the Secret Service workforce is dedicated and committed to uphold its oath to the Constitution and assure that its vital, no-fail mission regarding the security of the presidential inauguration and the peaceful transfer of power is carried out.
If that be the case, I don't forget the guy's name. How come you intervened in the Windmill Ministries in Madison County, Tennessee in 1989, whenever I was issuing out material telling people that the first seal of the book of Revelations had been opened? How come you, Secret Service, took it upon yourselves towards confiscating the first sword from the ministry? A sword that was made out of aluminum that wouldn't have been at you. You would have done more damage with a fly swatter than you would this particular sword that didn't have an edge on it that may have been a stirring device instead of a weapon device. But instead, I was charged with a deadly weapon and spent some time down in Bolivar after me protesting, wanting to stand up for peace and utopia, after me protesting what had happened, hauled off from the Gibson County Courthouse and taken down to Bolivar, Tennessee for a period of about a month while they was engaged in evaluating me to see what was going on in my upstairs. It is Secret Service that should be blamed, not just for the occurrence that happened on January the 6th, but it is law enforcement agencies such as this that should be blamed in where we are right now towards a nation that is hemorrhaging and having problems all over the 50 states in regards towards us being totally upside down in comparison to where we was 30 plus years ago before Ronald Reagan ended his presidency and allowed for the corrupt Bushes to come in power. It was this agency that has failed the safety and the well-being of the people. It is this agency that intervened with the Windmill Ministries, not just in 1989, but also towards the event that happened in 2009, whenever they decided to put out a federal watch list openly pertaining to a dragnet that they put on the individual's life that is speaking to you right now in behind the camera by the name of Dennis James Jackson, known as Juby. I have not yet got any type of satisfaction. I have not yet got any type of correspondence from these particular departments other than complete, total silence.
This year, of course, as everyone is aware, our country is battling the most significant health crisis to face the nation in more than a century. And the need to follow recommended public health guidance, combined with the increased measures resulting from last week's events, will undoubtedly impact the inauguration in almost every aspect. That said, our security plan was developed to respond to any contingency that might arise on and leading up to January 20th. Our partners for securing the inauguration include, among many, many others, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which is responsible for incident response and recovery, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, which is responsible for intelligence and incident investigation, and of course, the men and women of the Metropolitan Police Department. As for any NSSE, the Secret Service's core strategy is to leverage our existing outstanding partnerships with our local law enforcement, public safety, and military colleagues here in the National Capital Region.
Then how come you didn't do it last week? There was all kinds of signs that was coming up pertaining to the danger, the red flags that was being alerted. Not just underground pertaining to social media, but on open media, mainstream media. I was even putting out stuff towards telling my people that there is a coup looming and that do not go to that particular event, January the 6th. I was trying to put out all kinds of warnings to all kinds of people, judges, sheriffs, FBI agents, Secret Service agents, and none of them was listened to. Not only was my warnings or advisories not listened to, but they wasn't listened to by the rest of the world that was putting out the same images. Just like whenever I sent the 43rd President of the United States while I was living in Davidson County a t-shirt that's read, "The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse," "A Bloody Road Ahead," the Juby Jackson story, "The Crown of Thorns, the Crown of Life," and wound up spending 4 days in a mental institution up in Davidson County because I was trying to give out a warning or an advisory. And since then, we have seen bloodshed fall up onto this country like we have never seen before. Since 2005, give or take 15 years now, we have seen incident after incident after incident towards a major massacre shooting that has occurred in America. And the whole time, I was only trying to help my citizens as a Good Samaritan under the Good Samaritan law. But did I get rewarded for it? No. I got punished for it. This was just about the time that Hurricane Katrina hit. And shortly thereof, I wound up going down to southern Mississippi and helping for about 6 months in recovery towards those precious people's poor lives.
As well as those who are directly here in support of the week's events, and to collaboratively develop a comprehensive security plan for the inauguration. As you would expect, there are many partners involved in this planning, a number of whom are here behind me. The Secret Service employs a unified command model. We establish an executive steering committee, which is staffed with senior representatives from these agencies and others who have primary jurisdiction over various aspects of the inauguration, and then create subcommittees, in this particular instance 28, dedicated to everything from crowd management, credentialing, maritime security, access control, medical care, just to name a few. The expertise and coordination of everyone involved is critical to a successful event. We have conducted numerous training initiatives, tabletop exercises, rehearsals, field and senior command level exercises to ensure we have immediate, well-coordinated, and effective response to any of the challenges we might face during this inauguration. Using this process, we've developed a comprehensive, integrated, and while it may not look like it from the outside, nimble security plan to ensure a safe environment for our protectees, the event, and the general public.
Now notice he said pertaining to this inauguration. That's wonderful. That's fine and dandy. You're finally on top of things. Give the monkey in the corner a cigar. Give him 2 stars. He finally done the right trick. But what's going to happen a month after the inauguration? 6 weeks after the inauguration? 6 months after the inauguration? Or what's going to happen on the next election or the next inauguration? You keep in mind, I'm the one with the sword symbolizing peace on earth that had to purchase and go back to the land between the lakes for it to be anointed by God. I'm the one that has that sword. And until this ministry takes on center stage, I promise you, things will only continue to get worse towards a bloody road ahead, which is contrary to the Bible that talks about a peace and a temporary utopia pertaining to a revival. And as long as this stalemate is continuing between we the people and this ministry, I promise you, the weather patterns will grow even worse. The people the crazies out there that either are on drugs or need to be on drugs, we will see more horrible things happen to the American people until finally 1 or 2 things happen. Until finally this ministry gets put on the right burner that it needs to be on, pertaining to it being a front burner, or until this country completely collapses up onto itself. And we're not too far from that occurring, being $28 trillion in debt and going to already spend something like $3.5 trillion just within the next few weeks or the next few months after Mr. Biden becomes president over the coronavirus problems, pertaining to how that it has affected all types of businesses and overloaded the medical industry from head to toe, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Once more, the conspiracy began in 1988 after 9 tapes wound up going to the White House, that instead of them confronting the people in how that they finally got the superpowers to agree upon the fact that the world was not going to be destroyed by a nuclear holocaust, but it was going to be destroyed the way that the Bible predicted for it to be destroyed, the fault falls upon the feet of Secret Service that was in charge of those affairs. It was Secret Service that hounded me in 1983 all the way down in Bolivar, Tennessee, simply because I was stating the fact that I was going to be the one to meet the Antichrist, and before the poison arrow struck my flesh, that I would suddenly evaporate or disappear. And this was whenever Gabriel was going to blow the trumpet and God was going to return towards transfigurating his people from mortal to immortal in a twinkling of an eye. It was Secret Service that had its eye up onto the founder of the Windmill Ministries, going all the way back to 1983. Whenever a divine miracle happened right here on Highway 89 in between Sharon, Tennessee and Kenton, Tennessee. It was Secret Service that has continued to fail the safety and the well-being of the American people again and again and again, including 9/11. And now you're going to get up there and we're supposed to pat you on the back because you finally decided to do your job?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Agent Miller. Administrator Tierney.
Thank you.
I realize that these people probably don't know nothing about my case and didn't have nothing to do with some of the things that I'm talking about. So it's not that the whole industry is tainted from the inside out from coast to coast. But there's various people that has been engaged in the industry, the law enforcement industry, that as far as I'm concerned, need to be called out to the general public. And I'm just not talking about Donald J. Trump. I'm talking about some heads of people with the FBI, some heads of people with Homeland Security needs to be pulled out and disciplined properly before the eyes of the people, because they have failed to produce safety and well-being for us all.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. I am Marianne Tierney. I am the Regional Administrator for the Federal Emergency Management Agency. While FEMA is not a law enforcement agency, public safety is our #1 priority for the inauguration. FEMA has taken several actions to promote good public safety during this event. The President has declared an emergency that has enabled FEMA to do several things. The first thing is we have deployed a national incident management team to the DC Emergency Operations Center to work in support of our district partners. We have also deployed regional incident management assistance teams to both Maryland and Virginia to support their planning and actions. We have been working with the district to identify resource requirements. For example, we are currently working a mission to pre-stage ambulance resources, and also we have moved commodities such as food, water, and shelter supplies closer in to support the district should that be needed.
Did you hear what she said? She said the president has declared this as an emergency. Well, isn't that ironic? The president is the one that jigged all this up. The president is the one that rallied his people into being a radical like this. And now, at the expense and the cost of the American people, we're having to pay for all this extra security. Who do you think is paying for all them National Guard, over 20,000 National Guard that's going to be boots on the ground? Who do you think's paying for that? We are. We, the taxpayers. We're paying for that. We're paying for FEMA, in which I've worked with FEMA. FEMA is a decent operation to work for, depending upon what leadership that you're under during the crisis that happened pertaining to the Katrina down in Mississippi with the hurricane. FEMA's pretty thorough towards how they go about doing things. You got to be licensed to do this, and you got to go through this test, and you got to go through that test just to be able to get on board with them towards helping them, even at and during an emergency. They're very thorough. It's almost like a government inside a government. But it's kind of ironic that the very person that started all of this is now declaring an emergency. Gee, you think somebody twisted somebody's arm? Or do you think that reality finally struck the guy up there towards realizing what type of chaos that he has developed with brain-warped, drug-induced, half-hearted cruel individuals that could care less of whether or not they die for their purpose or their cause. They have finally done the right thing in the eyes of the people. And I don't know if it was forced or if it was done voluntarily. But yes, I agree that a national emergency should be declared.
We continue to support the Secret Service in their efforts to plan for this event. FEMA has also conducted several exercises in response to requests from the Secret Service as well as other agencies to help prepare since January 6th. That is all I have, pending any questions.
Thank you for your... Let me now introduce Jeff Reinbold, who is the superintendent for the National Mall Memorial Parks from the National Park Service.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser.
Now here's another agency that took a whack at me pertaining to the National Forest Division in Land Between the Lakes, pertaining to a Mr. Gary Hawkins and Elisa Hawkins, pertaining to Dwayne Camry. They used their federal authority, their power, in bringing me back from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, after 2 initial telephone calls that I had not violated any type of regulations, any type of probations, any type of orders towards ordering me not to never contact the Land Between the Lakes authorities. 2 telephone calls that was made in the span of about 90 days costed me almost a year in jail in Trigg County, Kentucky, pertaining to a Judge Woodall. Let's listen to what they have to say now.
Good afternoon. Inaugurations are special times, right? For our nation, for our city, and especially for those of us at the National Mall who host a lot of the events around an inauguration. This one is no doubt very challenging. And we've had a chance to work with the Presidential Inaugural Committee since November and to come up with a reimagined inauguration. We did receive a letter from the U.S. Secret Service yesterday asking us to consider closing several areas within the National Mall. This is essentially the monumental core, the area around the White House and sections of Pennsylvania Avenue. I do want to thank the Secret Service, the U.S. Park Police, for working with us to understand what their concerns are, how we could help address this national security issue, to make sure that the icons that we administer are protected, and also to make sure that, if possible, we could allow for First Amendment activities in the park. We are the premier First Amendment area in the country, in the world probably, and we wanted to see if it was possible to do that and also meet their security needs. So as of this morning, the Secretary of the Interior has officially closed the areas in the National Mall. That includes, again, the core area and the locations that the mayor mentioned before, in support of the request from the Secret Service and the U.S. Park Police.
And once more, I'm not saying that this agency, this particular agency up there right now that's speaking, directly had anything to do with what went on with me personally up in Land Between the Lakes. But indirectly, they're all tied in together, beginning up in Atlanta, that goes up into Washington, D.C., of all the national parks, all the national icons in this country. They're all tied in together with the Forestry Division. And people don't realize how powerful that these people are towards what that they can actually do. Right now, they're shutting down these events. They're shutting down these monuments. They're shutting her down, pertaining to people that may have the money to get on an airplane and fly all the way over here just so they can be a tourist and wanting to visit one of those memorial sites. They're shutting it down from the public right now, which personally, pertaining to what's going on and how big it's going on, it's probably a wise idea that they do this, regardless whether it be the Statue of Liberty or whatever up there, because if you've never been to Washington, Washington, D.C. is a very, very elaborate city towards being able to go from one thing to another thing that all surrounds we, the people, pertaining to what the American citizens has paid for in the past. It's a very state-of-the-art city in regards to this. So rather than adding insult to injury, they're nipping it at the bud, and I give them 2 thumbs up in what they're doing pertaining to all of the forestry monument sites in that area.
I do want to talk for just a second about the First Amendment areas. We were able to identify 2 locations. We had several groups that had submitted First Amendment applications, and we were able to identify 2 locations on Pennsylvania Avenue where up to 100 people will be able to gather. They will be met by U.S. Park Police, escorted through magnetometers, and then taken to these areas so that they can exercise their First Amendment rights. I do again want to thank the Park Police and the Secret Service for trying to find a way that we could accommodate that, but recognize that these are different times and require different measures. I also want to acknowledge Mayor Bowser for working with the Secretary of the Interior to address some of the concerns that she has for the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. Stephen Booker, the Acting Assistant Chief for the United States Park Police.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser. On behalf of Acting Chief Monahan and the United States Park Police, the men and women, as Agent Matt Miller said, this is unprecedented. This inauguration is something filled with excitement, hope, and hopefully a new path forward. The United States Park Police, as stewards of democracy, ensure that First Amendment rights are allowed to occur on federal park lands, and our officers do it with emotional and personal fortitude to make sure that the mission of the National Park Service and Department of Interior is intact. Our roles are not only the law enforcement arm of the National Park Service within Washington, D.C., but also San Francisco and in New York as well. We are here to stand by the NSSE and all of our D.C. officials, our public safety administrators, our local law enforcement to ensure a safe and secure event next week. We work collaboratively, and we have been doing so for months now in our incident management team, with many men and women engulfed long hours into this planning. I congratulate them. A few more days left to ensure we have a safe event for next week. I'm here afterwards for any additional questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Paul Wiedefeld, General Manager for Metro WMATA.
And we're going to return to the briefing as soon as we hear more from security. But back with me now is former FBI Director James Comey. Jim Comey, it's startling to hear, first of all, that there were as many as a dozen, if not more, on the watch list in one place during the riot, participating in the riot. This is not the no-fly list, but these are people who managed to get to D.C. Is that an intelligence failure?
It is potentially. I mean, you put people on that particular list because you want to understand if they have an encounter with law enforcement and they're people you worry about. And so I don't want to judge it from afar, but it's going to be important to understand in a comprehensive way, what did the relevant agencies, especially the FBI, know, and what did they do with information that they knew?
Now, Pete Williams and our colleagues covering justice are saying that there is...
Once more, these are areas that they failed in. They can follow me around, listen to my voice conversations, and read all my text messages towards what I'm putting out to the general public. But yet no, they can't keep their eye on 12 individuals that has met the same type of criteria for whatever reason. Once more, I've been trying to help the American people, not hurt them. But my government, for some reason, wanted to stain, cripple, and destroy a United States ministry by the name of the Windmill Ministries. And because of their image being so perverted, whenever I come back here in 2014, the whole neighborhood rose up about me moving back to this neighborhood that I had been reared up in since I was just knee-high to a grasshopper at the age of 6 or 7 years old. The whole neighborhood rose up because of the lies, because of the image that Homeland Security had put out about the founder of the Windmill Ministries. Once more, this ministry has not failed the people, but the people have failed this ministry because they have tried to do everything in the world towards destroying its purpose. And because of it, that's exactly where we are right now, towards having to engage in all this heavy security, $28 trillion in debt, a coronavirus, and God only knows what's left down the pike. I know last year alone, it was a multi-billion-dollar problem pertaining to all the floods and fires and hurricanes and droughts and fires out west and all the hurricane season exacerbated any other hurricane season that we've ever had towards being struck again and again and again. We have to start asking the question, folks, why has these troubles befallen upon to the American land? Why has this type of wrath, horror, retribution fallen upon to we the people? Somebody needs to wake up and hear what's going on.
There's a new filing that says that there is strong evidence suggesting that their intent was to capture and assassinate members of Congress. This is a court filing that has just been made. How alarming is that?
It's very alarming. Not surprising.
There's no doubt in what their intent was. Everybody's seen what happened.
Given some of the images that we saw and the evident organization. You don't show up with ladders and sledgehammers and ropes and zip ties to a peaceful protest about political issues. You show up with that stuff because of an assault, and you aim to harm and restrain people. So it's not surprising that's being looked at. It has to be a comprehensive investigation to understand just how far did this go, who supported it, who funded it, who knew about it, who assisted that effort. It should be taken really seriously.
The Washington Post is reporting that they got within minutes, if not seconds, of the vice president's office off the Senate floor where he was.
Yeah, I read that reporting.
Mr. Comey, let me interrupt you one more time because Metropolitan Police Chief Conte is about to speak. Let's both listen to that and we'll talk on the other side.
Continuation and peaceful transition of presidential executive powers. For over 1.5 centuries, people have come from all over the world to witness and commemorate this historic event. However, this year will be significantly different. As we have done since President Lincoln's second inaugural ceremony in 1865, the Metropolitan Police Department members, along with our many partners, have had the greatest honor participating in the planning and execution of the presidential inauguration. We know that every MPD member who has had the opportunity to participate in an inaugural event has looked back on the unique experiences for the rest of their lives. And since the 1890s, members of the outside law enforcement agencies from across the nation have provided vital support to MPD in the inaugural proceedings and will do so again this year. While things are different this year due to the ongoing public health emergency and the insurrection that took place at the Capitol last week, it rests upon the dedicated law enforcement officers to provide the utmost in safety, security, and professional police service to all those who come to take part in this momentous occasion. The expertise of each participating law enforcement public safety, and military agency is critical to the success of a coordinated and executed security plan. The Metropolitan Police Department has carefully planned for resources and personnel for this event, and the additional resources will enable MPD to provide the same great level of quality and professional police service to our communities. All of our officers will be on hand to participate in ensuring a peaceful day, both for inaugural events and throughout our great city. MPD continually collaborates with our federal partners and monitors various intelligence sources for information regarding possible threats to DC. At this time, I really would just like to echo the comments of our mayor for people to really enjoy this as a virtual event. We are working hard not only to secure the event itself, but also working very hard to reassure the communities of the District of Columbia that we are prepared for this event. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll take some questions, and I think Susanna is going to help us get people acknowledged, and if you could just state your name and your organization.
Sure, yes. This is Michael Bryce Sadler with the Washington Post. My first question is, for the people who live and work downtown in the district, what's the protocol for them if they need to access areas that are currently fenced off?
Okay, thanks for that question. Michael is asking, how does a resident access the secured areas? And I'm going to ask the Secret Service to address that question.
And returning to Jim Comey, the author of Saving Justice, his new book, Mr. Comey, let's pick up where I just left off, where the vice president was in his own office right off the Senate floor. He'd been taken there only minutes before as the mob was breaching the Capitol. And then within seconds of him being detected by the mob, a very brave and smart Capitol Police Officer Eugene Goodman diverted the approaching gang to another part of it, to the other direction of the floor. Just how dangerous. Well, I mean, how did this happen? What kind of a breakdown of security in the fact that they even let him stay in the chamber for as long as they did?
This could have wound up turning into a horror movie. Or this could have wound up turning into a science fiction movie to where a bunch of people was holding our officials hostage, making demands that if we didn't do certain things, that they was fixing to kill various officials. This could have turned out to have been one of the worst case scenario nightmares that not only the American people has ever witnessed, but the world in general. That's how close that this come. And I still say to this day, it's only by the hand of God. Thank God for God, that God was protecting in this situation that could have wound up being 1,000 million times worse than what it actually is, or what it actually was.
Well, it underscores both the heroic actions of an individual can make an enormous difference in life, how close we came to a bloodbath as a Secret Service detail would have been confronted by an angry mob, and how horrific the failure was to protect that hill, to keep that hill safe. It's ground that can be defended. It just wasn't defended. And that isn't a failure of imagination. That's just a failure. And so understanding how that happened, not because we want to headhunt or get people's jobs, but because we want to make sure it doesn't happen again. Doing that look back in a comprehensive way is going to be essential to our security.
Absolutely. On accountability issues. Absolutely. And in the meantime, they need to quit picking and poking on people such as myself. I mean, what if, let's say somebody's young child gets on the computer and says the wrong things, and the next thing you know, the men in black wind up at your door. And the next thing you know, your child's life is scarred and marred, similar towards mine, because that child said the wrong thing on the computer, and it wound up leaking out. You have all these scenarios that can possibly happen, and is it fair for the innocent to have to go through in the degree of what the guilty is going through? There's no doubt there's certain people in this country that you need to watch. They're crazy in how that they think and what they think. They're the most bizarre thinking bunch of people, radical bunch of people in the world. The thing about the ministry and the founder to the ministry is that I have been judged off of the content of what I was preaching towards what I'm preaching. The book of Revelations is an heretical book. Because I was preaching an heretical subject, they immediately thought that I was a radical. And they was trying so desperately to put me in that category. Even after I moved back here in 2014, they was trying to provoke me in the fact of drawing me out and becoming a radical. Oh, it would have just tickled them pink if I would have wound up with a knockdown drag out here in front of the house on the highway. Regardless whether it was a teenager, regardless whether it was somebody in their 30s or somebody in their 60s. It would have tickled them pink if we could have lured Juby, the individual that's talking to you right now, into a state of violence, even though it was Juby's right and Juby should have defended himself that way. The countryside wouldn't have looked upon this situation like that. I couldn't tell you how many times, listen to me, and I'm going to end this. I don't care what else is said. I'm going to end this. I don't care how many times my mother and us boys sat around discussing again and again and again. And we went to various people towards trying to get help at that time up here in Weakley County, up here by the school, but we never could get no help. But I couldn't tell you how many times that we sat around contemplating towards who was going to be the trigger man towards walking into my father's bedroom and taking a double-barrel shotgun and putting to his head while he was asleep and somebody pulling the trigger and dismembering his head from his shoulders. I couldn't tell you the amount of times that we was plotting towards wanting to kill a crazy, crazy man that was distributing pain and agony upon to his family. One of the main reasons why that we didn't do that was because of the subject content of the type of people that we was living around. We felt like that it would have been an injustice act, not so much upon our part, but the way that the public would have viewed it. They would have attacked us and we would have wound up being double punished because they would have said that we took the law into our own hands, even though we was only struggling and fighting for our own sanity and for our own independence and our own lives. Talk about cruel and unusual treatment. The Woodruffs, the McClanahans, the Nelsons, the Wainscots, the Jacobses, the Halls, the Coopers, the Willises, the Bakers, the Neals. I could go down a long, long list of people that knew, not only now, but knew then what we was experiencing. That's the type of atmosphere that the individual that's talking to you right now was raised up in. Simply because of a World War II veteran that everybody wanted to idolize because the war had been won, regardless of what type of actions that he displayed upon to his family. As long as he kept life in our lungs, that was good enough according to the neighborhood, according to the whites, according to the Bakers, according to the other type of big farming community families around here. As long as he left life in the lungs, that was good enough. That we as a society, even as children, deserved one beating after another that wasn't displayed secretly and behind closed doors, but openly in front of the people. In front of the Stones, Peggy and Roy Stone, that used to operate the Obion County Hop-In store. In front of the Simmonses. In front of the Sweats. The family of Sweats. In front of the Cobles. These was all demonstrated openly. And to think that my own people have thrown me under the bus towards leaving me hanging out to dry since I've stood up for the ministry in 1989. To think that they have abandoned their obligations to a man that had passionate, loyal feelings towards wanting to do something for the subservient of God, to think that they turned their back on this ministry the way that they did towards not just not helping, but actually participating in attacking us to the point of trying to bring it to ruin, including your law enforcement agencies, either in Martin, Tennessee, Kenton, Tennessee, or Weakley County, Tennessee. And to think to this day they're all still in denial? Good luck in that. Good luck in that one day. Whenever they die and they stand in front of the Creator during the great white throne judgment, I promise you it will be the Heavenly Father that will judge these people towards not so much what they didn't do that they should have done, but what they did do and they acted like they didn't do it. Or they set aside in allowing for others to do it while they didn't utter a word, becoming an accessory to the crime. This ministry has a long story to tell, a long testimony, beginning with Homeland Security, up in the White House, towards allowing for the government officials to know that there was an anointed one here in the land that had been chosen by God to demonstrate the powers of God in the last days. And rather than being rewarded for it, I was punished for it beginning in 1983 whenever they wanted to brand me by saying that I was psychologically, emotionally, chemically imbalanced. And now, 30-something years later, we see where the drug-induced society has taken over. All these people that has all these problems, not just physical, financial problems, but emotional and mental problems. Now we see where the church world has been ripped and torn apart to the point that most of these buildings around here in this particular area, and I'm sure all over the countryside, is struggling just to keep their lights on. And we still have a law enforcement agency that is basically crawfishing right in front of our very eyes towards not admitting the guilt towards what had occurred January the 6th, 2021 at the Capitol building. When is the American people going to wake up in understanding that they have been under a deceitful spell going all the way back into the 80s?
We've got the inspectors general from several departments now getting into this, as well as the speaker today announced that General Russell Honore is going to be overseeing an investigation for Congress, as well as, of course, the relevant committees. Is that enough, or do we need a 9/11 style commission?
I'm not sure that's going to be enough. I don't want to prejudge it till I hear what they're all planning to do. But this spans branches of government, the executive branch and the legislative branch. The inspectors general for justice or defense of the intelligence community can't look at the piece involving the Capitol Police, and those looking at it for the Congress can't look at the executive branch. I think this is a big enough threat, an attack on the center of our democracy, that it's going to need a look that spans branches of government, something closer to a 9/11 commission.
What's your response to allegations that members of Congress themselves may have helped rioters by giving them tours days before, tours that are not available under COVID? Wittingly
has
or
to be looked
unwittingly,
at.
I should say.
But the investigation has to include an effort to understand everybody who was involved, whether that was support, reconnaissance, funding, direction, planning, all of it has to be looked at. And I hope members of Congress weren't involved, but investigators have to stare at that very hard and try to understand it. And if they were, pursue it aggressively.
The attorney for Jake and Jelly, the QAnon shaman who also goes by the name Jacob Chansley, has been charged. He's been charged with violent entry, disorderly conduct on Capitol grounds, and other charges that were added today. He says his client should be pardoned by the President of the United States. Now, as bizarre as that might seem, we know the President's record of pardons. Let me play a bit of the attorney, Albert Watkins.
He was there at the invitation of our president. Trump needs to stand up and own these people. He owes them an obligation. He has an obligation to them. He has an obligation to our nation.
And do what, Al?
Oh, wait, give a pardon.
Jim Comey, what about that? That was an interview on CNN last night. What about the possibility that this president has the power to pardon this man?
I'm going to stop right there once more. I'm in violation of my own words here towards interfering on this last part. But the bottom line is this. Those poor people took the bait. It was an entrapment deal that went on by the president of various leaders below the president. And they entrapped them people towards them people falling for the bait and went up to Washington, D.C. And now their lives will be ruined for life. And if they won't be ruined for life pertaining to them going to jail for long periods of time, it will be marked for life pertaining to the scarring that goes along with what these events can ultimately bring upon to an individual's life. And I really hate to see so many people that have been misled, bamboozled, basically an entrapment deal towards giving in to this type of excitement. And now they'll have to pay the ultimate price for it the rest of their lives. Just like the little teenager that types around on the computer and says the wrong word to the wrong person. And the next thing you know, you got the men in black knocking on the door wanting to know what your son or what your daughter's involved in. And they wind up being put on some sort of a watch list or be put on some sort of a no-flight list the rest of their lives. That ruins their lives. What you have here is a failed law enforcement agency, beginning with Secret Service, that I have been acquainted with since 1983. You have here a failed system that wants to bring harsh punishment to the innocent and a lot of times out-and-out failure to the guilty. You know, there should have been cameras set up immediately recognizing various people that was already on watch list the day before. That's the breach. They actually went into the Capitol building and went on a tour. That these people should have been identified the same way as I get identified. It doesn't matter what Capitol building that I go to. I went to one up in California, Sacramento, California. And before I was in there an hour, they identified who I was. And I had all kinds of special security around me towards watching every move that I made. Red flags went up because I was in that Capitol. I was looking around as a tourist. How come this didn't happen on that same level at the Capitol building where we protect our legislation? How come this did not happen where the temple is set up at? That's the part that you got to look at towards who was in control and who let things slide to the point that it escalated the way that it did on January the 6th. And once you figure out who was in control of those buttons, who was in control of those cameras, who should have been watching, and where those red flags should have got thrown up at, that's where you begin towards chopping off people's careers and punishing people that didn't do their jobs. regardless whether it was Congress, senators, regardless whether it was Capitol Police, regardless whether it was Homeland Security, FBI, whoever, whatever. Somebody failed. Especially after the Capitol had been broken into, and it took how long to finally clear them all out? It was one of the harsh events as an American citizen at the age of 59 that I've ever had to lay my eyes on and watch right in front of my very eyes occurring that was similar towards 9/11. The only difference between 9/11 and this is that it wasn't as many people that got harmed and hurt, and it wasn't as much real estate that got tore up this day, pertaining to buildings being blown up and torn up, etc., towards what actually occurred on 9/11. That's the only difference. But whenever you look at the magnitude of the danger, just like Lost in Space, those flags should have went up way before the incident ever got that close of occurring. That's the breach and the failure of the security of the people. That's the part where people needs to investigate. Good luck to all of us, and thanks again for listening to the Windmill Ministries here at 291 Thompson Road. We advise for each and every person to watch this particular event of the exchanging of the power on virtual TV. Don't spend your good money and time towards going up to Washington, D.C. and getting caught up into a big hullabaloo to the point that you're at the wrong place at the wrong time, and the next thing you know, you're being charged by guilty by association because you was with the wrong group. With the wrong group, at the wrong time, at the wrong place, and now we're gonna charge everybody. We're gonna put everybody on the blacklist. Everybody is gonna be put on the watch list. Even if it's little Johnny or little Sally. This hypocrisy has to stop. I don't know when it's going to stop. I don't know where it's going to stop. I don't know who's going to be the one to stop it, but it's going to have to stop. Thanks again for listening. Good luck to all of us. God bless America. God bless those who are striving towards a righteous, holy way of life pertaining to the teachings of the Lord Jesus Christ. And good luck to each and every one of us as we go forth in conquering and to conquer the wickedness of the world. Because the Bible is very clear towards in the last days, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, will come forth. It will come forth, severing the wicked from among the just, and the meek shall inherit the earth. Regardless whether they like it or not, the meek, God's holy chosen people, will be the ones that will come out on top throughout not just this, but in every other event that you can think of up onto this planet. And that is a promise coming from the founder of the Windmill Ministries missions here at 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255.